This video is to show you how to generate a CDA with sections, a little more advanced than the one you've done. So hopefully this will be helpful. To generate our base CDA, we will use the tool provided by the course, and that will give us a starting point to generate the CDA with these sections that we need, and we'll build on it from there. So we'll use the form to create the CDA, and then we'll use the tool to validate it. On my screen, I have two elements. On this side, the data I'll need to generate the CDA, and then basically what I am going to do is just fill in the information requested by the document. So I look for the ID of the document. Okay, it's this. And I start to fill in the information. What we're supposed to be creating is a discharge report. So, discharge summary note, the confidentiality code. We can put that it is not confidential. A title, we name it discharge summary. And we fill in the patient data the same way. The patient's ID is this. And the root corresponds to the OID of the master patient index. The patient's name is Eve. The gender is female. And now we do the author section. The root of the organization is this. We don't have the organization's ID, so we can create one. And the name is Good Health Hospital. As for the doctor's identifier, the root will be the author's OID. The extension will be 3665. First name, Sandy. Family name, Sample. And now we're going to focus on the section. We're going to create the first section. Remember that you'll have to create different sections. In this case, I'm going to have an admitting diagnosis where the text here will be. With all that completed, I can generate the CDA. I click on Create My CDA, and in the output field, I get a CDA. So I select everything. I copy it, and I'm going to go to the validator to see if what I have generated is correct. I put it in the validator, I ask to validate it, and it tells me that this document is valid. So that gives me a solid foundation for creating the new sections we're going to be working on. For this part, we're going to use an editor that lets us work with XML in a very accessible way, and that marks our errors for us, shows what we can validate, and clearly differentiates the XML tags of the values and attributes. To work with these XMLs, you can use any commercial editor, like Oxygen, XML Spy. There are different editors. We're going to focus on this one because it has the basic functionalities and it's also free to use. So Google the editing program Notepad++ and download it. And then in the plugins section, you have a plugin for XML. If you don't have it, go to the plugins administrator and it will give you the details for any that you want to install. Then you can add it. In this case, I already have it installed, so what I recommend is that you install the XML Tools plugin, which will allow you to perform the different operations that we are going to do with the CDA, such as simple editing and then validating it. So we have the program here. We create a blank file, and what we're going to do is paste in our CDA. And now we'll tell it what language this is in. Right now it's treating it like plain text because it doesn't know what language we're using. But we're going to tell it that this is XML. So now we are going to be able to see all the labels of each of the elements and what the attributes are, and what the elements and values are. And using the XML Tools plugin, I can always check the syntax of the document, okay? No errors detected. In case I do have something malformed, let's say I don't have the family tag closed properly, and I click on Validate. The first thing I do is check that the syntax is correct, and it flags an error, right? And it's an error because I'm missing the closure of this element. I check again, and there are no errors detected. To validate it, we need to have already downloaded all the schemas that the CDA is defined with. We're going to validate our CDA against the schemas provided by HL7. These elements are available to download from the site. What I did was download them to a directory and unzip the zip file in that same folder. You're going to have something like this, where I have all the schemas, 6 of them, and I have them all in the same folder. So to work with this document, what we are going to do is save this CDA, also in that same folder where we have those schemas. That way, we can validate it directly without even changing the location of the schema. What we are going to do is save it in the folder where we have the CDA schemas. I'm going to call it My CDA. What we can do now, in the same way we did with the online validator, is to validate our CDA, but now we're using the XML schema. If there's something that doesn't correspond to CDA, the schema will let us know. If I put, let's say for example, names is an XML that is well formed and I can check that the syntax is right, but when we try to validate it against the schema, we see that it fails because the names element doesn't exist within the definition of CDA. It's not in the standard. So we go back and fix it. We have our CDA, and it's really small, isn't it? And what we're being asked to do now is generate this CDA with other sections too, not just this one. We're supposed to also generate more. And it tells us we need to use a certain coding system to code these sections. Spoiler alert, it's LOINC. So let's see what we have to do. We are basically going to have more of these structures like this one, right? So what we are going to do now is make more structures of this type. I'm going to make one so you get the idea, and you're going to finish the rest, okay? I'm going to start with this structure, and now we're going to look at what the assignment wants us to do. We're going to delete this template ID because we're not using it for this section. And basically in each of the sections, I'll have a code. In this case, it tells me that the coding system is LOINC, and I'm not going to touch it. I will have a code for that section, which I will look for in the specification. Title, saying what it's about, what it corresponds to, and in text, we will include the text requested by the activity. Let's look for both of those things and generate the first section. Let's look at how we code our second section. We said that the code is still LOINC, and we have to see what the code is for social history. Let's start with social history. We can find the details of the codes here. So let's open it in a new tab. And here we have all the different encodings for each of the sections. You can see that for allergies, this is the code. For hospital course narrative, this is the code. For the discharge diagnosis narrative, the code is this, right? So the code we are going to look for is the one for social history. That's the one we're looking for. So the social history code is this, and we copy it, and now what we're going to do is put in the social history code of this section, which is the code that corresponds to it. In title, we put social history, and in the text, we put what the activity asks us to put in. I am going to paste it directly as text to keep things simple, but this could also be specified as a table, or as any other element, or a list, and using the different attributes that you can give text in CDA. The same thing I just did with these components and with the social history section is what you need to do with the rest of the sections that the activity asks for. Once you have the XML ready, you save it. Be sure to validate the document. If you don't, the campus will validate it before you send it, so I'm telling you to validate it first, okay? It tells me that the document is valid. Be sure to validate it. Once you have it, copy all this text, go to the campus, edit your submission, and paste it into the text box, and then send it to be graded. I hope this video has been useful and that you take advantage of the potential of an XML text editor to be able to work on each of the elements a CDA contains and see them in detail.